Well, hello. I would say good morning, but some people may be watching this at night or in the middle of the day, so I'll just say hello. Welcome to Austin City Hall for a very important session as we embark on some important community engagement work related to the City of Austin's bond development process. My name is Larry Schooler, and I'm the city's community engagement consultant. It's my honor to be a part of this volunteer training session today. Joining me from the City of Austin are Mark Abrego. He's an Austin Core intern this semester. He's a senior at Crockett High School. John Nixon from the Communications and Public Information Office is coordinating all of the communications work connected to the bond development process, and he's sitting to my immediate right with this nifty tablet device. To my immediate left is Molly Scarborough from the Capital Planning Office at the city, who is just kind of in charge of all things bond. Bond, Molly, the bond. And Chelsea Brass over there is from the LBJ school, also doing an internship specific to the bond development process. She's working directly with me and with Molly, and we're thrilled to have her as well. Why don't we do very, very brief introductions, just kind of a name and what got you interested in coming here today, and we'll start here on the end, if you don't mind. Gary, are all the mics active? Okay, so maybe just if you don't mind using the mic, just so that.
Make sure the green button's on.
Yeah, if the green light. There you go.
Sure. My name is Robert Anderson. I'm from the Planning and Development Review Department, and I was inspired to volunteer for this due to the specific injection of the rail as part of this activity.
Okay.
I'm Teresa Murray. I work.
Just hit the button that makes it go green. Is it on? Okay.
Teresa Murray. I'm with LCRA, and I just enjoy volunteering in facilitation projects such as these.
Great.
I'm Patricia Guy. Many years ago, I was with the Austin Parks and Recreation Department as a recreation program specialist, and I got to take part in some of the earlier rounds of the Imagine Austin with the artists at the Mexican American Cultural Center and at the storefront downtown, and loved the process. And so this is a chance to see what's happening at this level of the process.
Great.
Lynn Osgood. I'm a doctoral student at UT in Community and Regional Planning. I also teach a course for undergraduate architects that introduces them to planning and community engagement. So I'm glad I can be here to see other things that are going on in the city and learn more about them.
Great.
There you go.
I'm Sarah Gam. I'm a local architect. I'm really excited about another opportunity for local citizens to participate in bond development. A great way. I'm interested in the Speak Week kind of process and how the city is going to play out, or how the city is going to facilitate this.
Sure.
And especially affordable housing. Interested in seeing how that kind of fits into what will become kind of the package of bond dollars. So.
Great. Thank you all very much for being here this morning. The Speak Week concept did originate within the city during the Imagine Austin process. A couple of people mentioned it. And it was a collaborative sort of brainstorm that centered around the idea that we're too big a city to hold enough meetings in person that will be convenient for everyone who cares about a particular issue like this to attend. I mean, it's really a fairly basic concept. You know, we're not in New England in the 1800s anymore, where we have one single town hall that we can expect everyone to reach by foot or horse to participate in the civic process. And we've been, over the course of the past 2.5 years since I've been working in community engagement, trying to develop strategies that enable anyone to participate in the fashion that is most comfortable for them. So some people are very comfortable participating online, and to spend 5 or 10 minutes on a website is great for them. But some people really do want the face-to-face engagement, but their lives make it very difficult for them to give up 2 hours on a weeknight to come out to a high school or another facility. So Speak Week was born out of the idea that a lot of people might have input, and if we can just catch them where they actually are, we'll get some really meaningful results out of that. And the experience during Imagine Austin was just that you had a number of people who may never have even known about Imagine Austin or known how to participate in City of Austin discussions would encounter one of our temporary kiosks and one of our enthusiastic volunteers and realized that it was just that simple, that they could walk up, give some input within a 5 or 10 minute period, and that input would be perhaps as meaningful as if they had given up a lot more time to come to an in-person meeting. So the fundamental concept here is to be able to reach a segment of our population, to reach all of our population, but to reach a segment of our population that might particularly have a difficult time coming out to an in-person session or utilizing some of our other tools. And we're hoping that by spreading our kiosks across much of the city into places where we know people are going, parks, shopping malls, et cetera, that we'll get quite a nice smattering of and sampling of Austinites input. Austinites input. So let's talk a little bit about the display that is to my left. This is a replica, a mock-up of the display that you as volunteers will be taking to the particular spot that you will be facilitating. And our vision is for a volunteer to take about a 2-hour shift at a particular location based on the patterns at that location. So for instance, if we happen to be at a commuter rail station, we might try for a morning rush hour spot, whereas if we're at the mall, we might try for a weekend slot rather. And it's entirely up to you how many slots you join us for. If one slot is plenty, that's plenty for us also. But if you have availability to either staff the same location more than once or take several locations, obviously we'd love that too. So armed with this poster, essentially what we're asking for the Austinite to tell us about is how they would evaluate this set of 6 guiding principles. Molly is here to fill in some holes in my working knowledge of the 6 guiding principles for the bond development process. But in essence, the City Council has endorsed these 6 guiding principles as a way to think about projects that would potentially be part of a future bond referendum put before the voters. But as it stands now, they've essentially given, let's say, equal weighting to each of the 6 guiding principles. And I think part of what we want to know from the public in this opening part of the engagement dialogue is to what extent one or more of these principles matter more to you than others. With the idea being that once we get a sense of how certain principles prioritize for the public, we can then use that sort of data to score potential projects that might be included in the bond referendum, so that when we ask the public to review particular projects for inclusion, they can see how their assessment of the principles then looks as the projects get evaluated. And Molly has done the classic lean in because she has something to say move.
Well, I was just going to say it's another way to evaluate the projects. I think score might be a little bit more formal of a term than what will occur, but it will provide information to the Bond Election Advisory Task Force as they're looking at, the minutia of projects. This provides them a little more bigger picture of, where do these fall into these kind of categories, and where does the community really feel the most importance should be placed in these sort of broad terms.
And as you'll see, some of the categories are somewhat self-explanatory, but some might not be. And so part of what you'll be given as a volunteer is what's in front of you, and for those watching, you'll have all this material as well. But we have prepared a number of handouts that will help the participant better understand what each of these guiding principles actually means. So for instance, this document, this very pretty graphic-laden document, gives you kind of a high-level overview of what the guiding principles mean. And then, do we have, I guess?
On the back of the instruction
right.
sheet.
So then if you look, so that's kind of if you're looking at the picture document, that's kind of the high level. And then if you look at the sort of instructions to the participant, which is the least pretty looking document, it says Speak Week Bond Edition, welcome, hello. On the back of it, it says here are the guiding principles, and then goes into a little bit more detail. So, when someone comes up to the booth, if they haven't yet gotten the handout and they say, well, what does sustainability mean? You can point them right to this printed material. And I know that most, if not all of this, would also be on the City of Austin's bond development portion of its website. And so that can also serve as an aid to the participant as well to understand better what they're going to do. So I've heard the phrase coined dotocracy, meaning sticker dots as a way to participate. This is very much a dotcratic kind of an exercise. While we don't have dots this morning, I can tell you that you'll essentially be giving that participant sticker dots to use to express how they would prioritize their guiding principles. So the idea is that they would put a sticker with the number 1 in it next to, in the box of whichever principle they think is the number 1, and then their number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now you might have that participant say, well, gosh, I think they're all equally important. We can accommodate that. They can put a number 1 sticker into all of them if they so desire. But we do want to encourage them to think in terms of what matters to them the most, because it will perhaps make it more meaningful for them as they go forward to think about the process and the package as a whole, to then think about how to prioritize projects as well, because of course there are far more needs within the city of Austin than there will be room in the bond package that might come in the future to accommodate. And so we're trying to encourage the public to begin thinking now about prioritization and evaluating different alternatives. And even at this early phase, we want to encourage that. So the stickers will just simply be placed into the boxes, and it may be, depending on what station you're staffing, that this will fill up very quickly, in which case we'll hopefully have maybe a backup poster or two for you to take with and just kind of, change it out if need be, because we want to make sure that those who are going to review this data can tell, okay, we had, 60 number 1s or whatever, be able to discern clearly which stickers are in which box, because it's going to be reviewed that carefully. So as people are voting, don't let them think they can just sort of casually kind of throw something up and that it's more kind of visual art. It really is kind of a survey on a wall, if you will. And so we want them to be, just very careful to make sure their dot is clearly, kind of distinct, and we know how to find it. I'll pause here and ask for questions about just kind of the basics of the exercise and the nuts and bolts. Questions? Sarah?
Well, yeah, say I'm a citizen, I come up and I say, hey, the most important thing to me is affordable housing. How do I know, I could pick out 3 of those that say cost effectiveness or sustainability, or I guess new initiatives, because I look at the picture and I see an affordable housing project.
Right.
But I'm just trying to relate something that's common language to someone oh, I care about roads or I care about sidewalks, to more conceptual terms that are up on the board.
Mm-hmm. And these are more conceptual terms. What we're trying to get is a little bit more of the distinction between, those of you who have participated in the Imagine Austin process, excuse me, which has created a vision for the direction of the city. Out of that process, they have some priority programs, including affordable housing, as part of that, as kind of setting, as we look at new projects, is there a little bit different direction that we want to be going? I think those sort of fall into the new initiatives category, where you have infrastructure to maintain city services. There are projects that we need to do as a city. Streets are in need of reconstruction. It's not necessarily a new initiative. It's not a new direction. Some people believe strongly that we don't want to put all of our eggs in the new stuff. We want to maintain what we have, our existing parks, our existing streets, our existing roadways and whatnot. And so that's sort of the distinction that we are trying to get through this process. Now, that being said, this is a particular ask that we are asking. We are asking people to kind of think about that set of asks of, do we kind of put, is it most important to kind of keep on doing what we're doing, or is it more important to kind of put additional monies into these sort of new directions, if you will? However, there will be opportunities throughout this process for that more specific input that people want to give. And I think that's an important component of this as well, is talking about the bond development process as well. And so we have another kind of sheet that you can point people to about the bond development process. It discusses the Bond Election Advisory Task Force, their role over the next few months in looking at various projects. The city will be in February presenting our needs assessment projects that we've identified to the Bond Election Advisory Task Force, and that's when they'll be looking at those specific roads, affordable housing, parks projects. And there'll be an opportunity in either late February or March for folks to provide their input into affordable housing, number one, that's my most important project. And this specific project or this specific program is something they can evaluate and put input to.
So what I'm gathering is this is like step one in many steps.
That's right.
So maybe it just seems like, yeah, articulating that to people like, hey, later you're going to get the opportunity to be real practical,
specific.
but today we're just talking about
That's
this.
a great way to say it, Sarah. Yeah, there is a very involved, multi-step, multi-platform community engagement process associated with the bond, and it's outlined in the handout that says bond development process for the city of Austin, and then there's a section that says opportunities for public participation. And even at the first phase, if you get somebody that comes up to your booth and says, well, I'm not really sure about all these principles, but I really care about affordable housing, you could immediately tell them to either send an email to bonddevelopment@austintexas.gov or send a text or leave a voicemail at the phone number listed there, the 539-0060. We wanted to set those up from the get-go as just early opportunities, much the same way someone can come to any of our task force meetings and speak now during the citizen communication. We wanted to have those kinds of remote opportunities available early on too. So if you have somebody that's, not 100% sure about this, but is sure about a position like that, they can begin to express those. Go ahead.
And Larry and I have talked about there will also be either a poster board or a comment card or something to that extent to where people can leave sort of open-ended comments as well. And we don't have that set up yet, but there will be, like I said, either another board or a comment box where exactly as Larry
A miscellaneous
said,
comment.
a miscellaneous comment about what other priorities do they think the Bond Election Advisory Task Force really needs to be paying attention to.
Sure.
So when people are, so they could do all ones if they wanted to, can they also do like combos of like?
And I do want to, pardon me to interrupt, I think that we actually want to put a blank sticker. If you think they're all equally of value, we want to put blank sticker, or we want to put 1 through 6.
Yeah, because some people will want to do 1 and 2 and then so are they allowed to do that too?
Well, we would prefer that they not. I mean, people are going to do what they're going to do, but we would encourage people to really think about the ranking of 1 through 6 of their level of importance, or if they feel they're all equally ranked, to put a blank sticker.
Okay.
And they could just choose, excuse me for booming my voice, they could just choose to, if only 3 resonate with them, they could rank only 3, or if they really only care about 1, they could only rank 1. We can be flexible that way. And as Molly said, I mean, we're not going to yank somebody's sticker off the wall if they've done 3 2s or something. I mean, we want participation, but we do want to try and encourage that prioritization.
One other question that might come up is once they've done and they've weighed in, they might say, where can I see the results? Is that going to be on that same website?
I would say almost for certain that it will be on the bond development website. And just for people that are watching, I'll read out the URL. It's austintexas.gov/department/bond-development. And I would feel certain we'd put the results there in addition to several other places like our social media and the like. So yes, they would have that. We are going to give, and I don't think we've got the template of this yet. I don't see Chelsea. We are going to ask people when they come to the booth to just check a few boxes telling us a little bit about who they are, just so that we can then have that data as well about where people live and, race, ethnicity, and things of that nature. And I suppose we could, I don't know how you feel about this, but if someone wanted to sign up for, information or to be notified of future events, could they potentially do that at the booth?
I'm going to defer to John because I think he's looking into options for signing up for our either Austin Notes or an email list.
Sure. Regardless, we're going to develop a distribution list because we want to collect people's email addresses as well. So if they put that information down, we'll be able to send out updates to them.
Great.
Um,
And can
go
I
ahead.
add one more
Of
thing?
course.
And that is in sharing the results, I also want to be sure to let you know that the results of these and the input that's gathered here will carry forward to the next community event as well, so that people's input from this process will be shown and available as people kind of dig into the next community meetings and discussions. They can kind of see what's been said before, and that they can evaluate that as they are asked to look at the projects or
Right.
look at things more specifically.
Lynn, go ahead.
With the dot on the big poster, the dot exercises, it seems like an exercise that really encourages conversation, that people will be putting their dots up and talking to each other. Beyond the place where we are, where we're going to be doing this, is there another time in which we can say, you know, you're busy now, thank you for your 5-10 minutes. There will be this forum where the public is going to gather
Absolutely.
and talk more about that. And
I feel like I
would that
planted
be?
Lynn with that question.
No.
Thanks for that question, Lynn.
Sure.
On February 7th, we're going to be hosting our first in-person event. It's a kickoff event, an open house event at the Palmer Events Center, and essentially it will be an extended opportunity for people to visit about the various guiding principles at different stations, and then to express their input in much the same way they would do at Speak Week, but with much more staff and entertainment and refreshments and a lot more people there to be able to have more dialogue about it. So yeah, there is a, pardon me, essentially an in-person component or I should say a shared experience component to every phase, and that's the event for this. It'll be February 7th, a Tuesday. I think we're saying 5 to 8?
4:30 to 8.
4:30 to 8. Yes. Right. Our compromise at the Palmer Events Center. Validated parking, I think, available, or free parking.
Yes, free parking.
So great question. Let me just very briefly hit a couple of other nuts and bolts items about the Speak Week kiosks. We've spent some time going back through the kiosk locations that we had for Imagine Austin, most of which worked very, very well. And so in the coming days, you'll be seeing some of those locations and some potential times, and we'd love for you to kind of, you know, if there are particular times and spots that are really work well for you, to sign up for those. But we're also open to other locations if you know them to be popular places at a particular time of the day or a particular time of the week, and they are close to your home or close to your office, or they could be your own office, I mean, depending on where you work. So that's part of the key to this process, is making sure that we're obviously where we think people are going to be, and that's going to be a somewhat iterative process to determine, particularly given, you know, the winter weather. We want to be in a place that's, you know, not going to be difficult for people to get to, or that they're not going to want to be in. So you'll see, like I said, a list of some locations and options, but we are very much open to just, you know, suggestions from volunteers of places that would be most effective, that they think they would be particularly helpful at hosting a booth that we just haven't thought of or didn't know about or haven't contacted. So keep that in mind. We're also going to have a fairly easy process for you to be able to get all of your materials. We know that for some people it's very convenient to come to City Hall and pick up materials, and for some people it isn't. And we will work with you to make sure that either the materials are available here at City Hall, or we're probably going to, for the places that are further out, position them either at our library or our rec center that's closest to that location, and just store them there, and the volunteer can pick them up the day before or the morning before their shift, so that you don't have to necessarily come all the way back here to do that. And certainly all, you know, copies of materials, you know, you're not going to have to print anything off on your own or anything like that. These will all be, you know, delivered to you as is. So that's the mechanics of that. And of course, the stickers will be included in all of those supply packets. So the main elements will be this display, of course. And in some cases, it'll make great sense to use, you know, the easel, but for certain outdoor locations, you know, it might be very difficult, and that's okay. I mean, we could, in theory, at a place where it was hard to keep the easel standing, just have the poster kind of rest on a table, you know, and just have people kind of walk up to it. It may take a little extra effort from the volunteer to attract people to it, but that could work just as well. So that's kind of a judgment call, but mostly I think the easel will work pretty well in most of our locations. So you have these two things. We'll probably have kind of a blank poster for miscellaneous comments, and I generally encourage that as opposed to the comment card, because I like people to see what other people are saying or commenting. So we'll probably have that second display, and then we'll have, of course, these handouts, a smaller little demographic piece to just get people to check a few boxes and tell us about that. I think am I mentioning everything?
Comment card or board.
Right, and the comment board. Did I miss any key sort of supplies that they'll have? That they'll need? I think I got all those. Okay.
Taylor,
Sarah,
is there anything that's going to say what a bond is?
that's a great question. The let's see. The document that says
Bond development process.
is the bond development process. Yeah, I think that this document is meant to be kind of the 101 document. It's labeled bond development process. And so it gives a little bit of an overview. If people need more, of course, there'll be more materials available, but this is something that you can use for that.
I wonder if that second poster you were talking about with the place where you could handwrite on it might, to have some sort of visual that basically outlines like a bond is a way for people to, set money aside for certain priorities or, development or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that really just plainly explains what a bond is. Because I could, maybe do it really informally,
Right.
but I don't think at this point could really outline all the points.
That's a good suggestion. We can talk to our graphics people and see if we can make that a part of our display. We certainly will have these available, but I think having it where someone just walks up to it might be also very useful.
Super basic,
Yeah.
I think.
No,
Yeah.
that's a great suggestion. We'll see if we can work that out.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
And I'll preface it with why I'm asking the question. For nearly 15 years, I didn't live here in Austin, but I commuted here and worked here.
Mm-hmm.
I live here now, but is there any requirement for people to?
Not at all.
Okay, so we don't worry about whether they.
We are not
actually
checking
live
identification.
Okay, well, I
or boots
understood that.
or
But
any
we
other-
may be asked, do I need to live here to give you feedback?
Right, and the answer is absolutely not. No, I mean, that it is a good question, but in virtually everything that we do, people will be impacted by the decisions made in Austin, even if they don't live in Austin. Frankly, even if they don't work every day in Austin, they might still be impacted. So we don't ever, we like to know where people live for purposes of knowing how we're doing in terms of our engagement and reaching the entire city. So we certainly want to know where people are, but it doesn't preclude their participation. So great question. Let me just see what else I want to. Let me see if I might turn it to Molly for another second to just kind of give people a real quick snapshot of kind of the process, the bond development process as a whole, so that people are educated about it. Of course, it's already begun because we formed a bond election advisory task force that's had 2 meetings where we've had some good participation already. But if you'd like to.
Certainly. Yes, back in October of last year, the City Council established the Bond Election Advisory Task Force, and that really started this process, the bond development process. The task force met in December, and then again, just last week, January 9th. Their next meeting will be January 23rd. They have a regularly set schedule of meetings through May of this year. Their role is really to evaluate potential and make recommendations for potential projects and programs for possible inclusion in a bond package to bring before the voters at some point in the future. So they will make their recommendations to council. Council will ultimately decide what should go on the ballot for voters to decide whether the city should borrow money to fund infrastructure projects within the city and where those dollars should be spent in general terms. We are looking for We're looking for community engagement to help the Bond Election Advisory Task Force develop their recommendations, and that's what this is the beginning of, to get the word out to the public that these recommendations are going to be formed, and we want to hear from you about what you feel are the priorities for this process, and the Bond Election Advisory Task Force does as well. So we're setting up a series of community engagement events starting with this, and again in late February and March, community-wide events to kind of funnel that information to the Bond Election Advisory Task Force. Citizens can always come to their task force meetings as well to hear their discussions and deliberations. It's also available on the web and Channel 6 for people who really want to get into the nitty-gritty as well. But over the next few months, let me back up. So in December, city staff also presented council with our capital needs assessment. And so that is sort of a broad overview of the types of projects that we see from our various departments that they've heard from their constituents as things that we could undertake in the next 5 to 6 years as potential infrastructure projects. And those sets of projects will be presented to the Bond Election Advisory Task Force in February at their February 16th meeting. So they will take that information from the city, the projects from the city departments, evaluate those. They'll also be taking input from the community, other projects that may not have bubbled up through the departments, other considerations to take, and sort of filter through all of that input to come up with their recommendations to City Council. Did that help?
We have her programmed to just do that whenever we ask for it. We just press a button.
And Larry is great at this sort of thing because he's very succinct and clear. I like details. I'm a detail person, so feel free to ask questions. I don't know that I necessarily capture things in a short period of time.
I think she was quite succinct. Given how much time we've met on the bond development process in comparison to how much time that took. John just had a suggestion to me, and I've just forgotten it. What was it? Oh, that's right. Molly, could you very briefly touch on, because one of the volunteers mentioned the interaction between urban rail and this process. Can you just very briefly explain how that works?
Yes, and so as part of the guiding principles that council approved in December, one of the guiding principles is to make investments in new mobility capacity, including an initial segment of urban rail. And that was included in the guiding principles because we've had a lot of community discussions about urban rail. Council wanted to verify that those discussions will be part of their decision-making process when they think about what to put before the voters in the bond. Now, that's not to say that they've made a decision by any means that they will put it before the voters. That's not the case at all. They're just saying that it is going to be one of the considerations that they will take. Now, the Bond Election Advisory Task Force will be focusing on general bond projects, but not specifically the urban rail project. Urban rail is being evaluated as part of a larger, broader discussion about high-capacity transit. There's a Campo Transit Working Group. Campo is the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. So it looks at a central Texas as a whole. It's not just the city of Austin. And so they're looking at how to implement the transit recommendations out of the Campo 2035 plan. Urban rail is one recommendation within that larger set of high-capacity transit discussions. And so those discussions are ongoing right now. There's also Project Connect, which is I'm not sure how best to describe it. It's also a discussion point for this Campo Transit Working Group and getting out to the community and getting feedback on high-capacity transit recommendations. So those processes are kind of going on a parallel path to the Bond Election Advisory Task Force. The task force will not be digging into urban rail, the complexities of urban rail and what that first and investment segment could be. Those discussions are happening with the Campo Transit Working Group and Project Connect process. They will be focusing on all other mobility potential improvements with the knowledge that when the Bond Election Advisory Task Force comes up with their recommendations in May, There may be additional recommendations coming out of the Campo Transit Working Group, Urban Rail, High Capacity Transit discussions, and council will be evaluating all of those together before they make a decision about what to put before the voters. So it's tangentially related to the discussions that we're having with the Bond Election Advisory Task Force. I think everyone's working on communication between the two processes because it's all could potentially be part of the package discussion at council. But the focus of the Bond Election Advisory Task Force is more on the general bond needs: parks, affordable housing, city facilities, public safety, mobility projects outside of the rail.
So if somebody has very specific feelings about whether there should be rail or where rail should go, they can make them as part of this process, but the more productive place might be this Project Connect and the Campo Transit Working Group. And so if something like that comes up at your booth and someone says, how do I say something about that, you could reference those two things and as a way to kind of more deeply engage in that specific conversation. Let's cover just one or two last nuts and bolts, and then just see if there are any other questions. Especially for those who are watching this, Chelsea Brass, who you met earlier, who had to slip away for a graduate school class, is overseeing all of the coordination of dispatching volunteers to the various temporary kiosk locations. And you probably have heard from her at some point, which is how you found out about this, but her email address is Chelsea, CHELSEA.brass, BRASS, and then at austontexas.gov, and her number is 974-2324. You'll want to be in touch with her. She will be contacting, of course, the folks that are here today, but you'll want to kind of keep in touch with her about availability, location interest, any special issues, any questions, all those sorts of things. But she will be the one kind of getting back in touch and saying, hey, we've got a location for you. Here's where to go. Here's where to pick up materials, and the like. So that's information that will be coming to you within the next week or so meaning maybe less, because we are trying to launch on Saturday, January the 28th, which would be a week from this Saturday, because we want to try to get a full week and 2 weekends before our February 7th open house event at Palmer that I mentioned earlier. So there'll be probably 7 to 10 days at least of opportunities for Speak Week volunteers to help us out. So the main thing is to stay in touch with Chelsea. If you haven't heard anything, check in with her and say, do we have a location yet for me to volunteer at, or do you need a different location, or can I recommend this location? And she'll coordinate all of that all of those logistics. And again, as you're meeting people and telling them about this and seeing them, they can immediately start engaging, right now, even if they haven't found a Speak Week booth or they're not going to be there on the 7th. We've got the hotline set up. It's active. We've got the email account going. It's active. And again, the hotline accepts voicemails and text messages, so they can do either, which is kind of a cool technology. And always there'll be updated information about our process as a whole at the bond development section of the city's website at austontexas.gov. The task force is meeting again on the
January 23rd.
Monday evening, January 23rd. I think they also have a meeting on the 30th. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So there are 2 upcoming meetings of the task force. If for folks are watching, they want to kind of deeply engage right now and go participate at those meetings. We are broadcasting them, but not simultaneously. They're kind of on tape delay, so people can see them online or on TV on tape delay. So, what other questions do folks have? We're very excited to have you guys as a part of this, and what do we still need to cover?
I have one question. You mentioned, for folks that are passionate about rail, you mentioned the Project Connect and Campo. Are there any other things we think folks might be passionate about that have an appropriate alternative to give their voice to? Is there anything else that's going on right now that might be like that?
I suppose it's possible that someone just really, Sarah was indicating, there may be someone very passionate about a particular issue. Certainly the city's many boards and commissions that are all kind of topic specific, like the Environmental Board or the Planning Commission or the Transportation Commission take comments from those who have that particular interest. And so you can always direct them to the boards and commissions part of the city's website to see when those meetings are. And most of those boards and commissions will be specifically engaged, I think, during the bond process with some kind of subject-specific presentation. So that is one way for them to kind of engage that way. But in terms of something formalized, I don't know that there's anything other than specifically the transit piece. Yeah, I don't think so. If something comes up, you can let us know, and we'll try to get some information to that person. But yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a very similar question, actually. I was wondering about maybe a list of key contacts at the city, certain departments. If, if someone has like a particular infrastructure question, maybe who would be someone that they would be able to contact, something like that.
I would just give and we can put this on the information as well. I'll give my information out as a conduit. I'm the liaison to the Bond Election Advisory Task Force. And so we want to kind of have one contact that people can go through to ask questions, get information about the process, get specific discussions if they're not able to at the meetings that we're providing as well. So my name again is Molly Scarborough. I'm with the Capital Planning Office. My number is 974-7629, and my email is Molly, MOLLY, .Scarborough, SCARBROUGH @austintexas.gov.
It's a great question, and I am glad Molly gave her information, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows that the email address and the hotline are meant for people to, submit questions, and people like Molly and I will be checking it and responding. So, certainly Molly's information is a good to have, but folks should know it's not just kind of a Dropbox. It will be something that we'll answer as needed. So if folks have questions that they want to just call in or email, they can use those tools. So good question. Any other questions? We're very grateful again, not just for your interest in the process, but in taking time out of your day to be here today. We thank those of you who have been watching us on Channel 6, and we thank Gary and Keith Reeves and the entire Channel 6 and City of Austin crew for making this video possible. My thanks to Molly, John, and Mark, and Chelsea to help make this event possible. We look forward to seeing you at a kiosk, and we'll be in touch with opportunities to get a Speak Week booth set up. Thank you all very much for coming today.